Hello YouTube. As a wise man once said, sharing tea with a fascinating stranger is one of life's true delights. Now, I don't have tea to share, but I will still take that wisdom to heart, and thus allow me to share with you the knowledge about the different kinds of teas and tea drinking cultures on Tamriel. Yep, we're looking at tea today, so let's roll the intro and dive straight in. So, tea. Hot water infused with different plants and spices. Just as there are many different flavors of tea in our own world, there are many different flavors and types of tea to be found around Tamriel, with many regional and local flavors. Now, a word of warning just at the very beginning, just because a tea originates from a certain place or is popular in a certain place doesn't mean that it's not drunk anywhere else. So, for example, a tea originating in High Rock may be popular all around Tamriel, and thus may be found in different places. What's interesting is that depending on how united Tamriel is in a certain time period, so whether it's all controlled by one empire or is made up of different countries, certain teas may be found in different places, or not, depending on the political situation. A good first example to start with here is the Cyrodiilic Blackwood Mint Chai tea. You see, while the concept of chai in the Elder Scrolls universe seems to have originated with the Khajiit, the Imperials of southern Cyrodiil have been making chai tea since possibly the late Merethic, early First Era, with some even linking the recipe of Blackwood Mint Chai tea to the legendary Paladin Whitestrake. Now, this tea in particular is very favoured by Imperial nobility and rich merchants, and it's said that the prosperity of any Cyrodiilic empire can kind of be measured by how widely available this tea is and how easy nobles and merchants can get their hands on it. That's what I mean by a regional tea showing up in many different places. If it's popular and if times are good, a regional recipe may conquer other parts of Tamriel. Now, that being said, I think it's a good idea to first go over some of the other regional flavors of tea and then move on to some of the Tamriel-wide flavors of tea, as we know far more about the regional flavors than we do about the Tamriel-wide flavors, as they often just have a name and no further lore associated with them. But there's still some interesting things to say. So, to start, let's go to one of the two provinces with probably the highest tea consumption, Elsewhere. The Khajiit of Elsewhere, together with the Dunmer of Morrowind, seem to have the biggest tea consumption and biggest tea culture. Many of the Khajiit's teas are very sweet, often sweetened with moon sugar, and often their teas will have milk in it. They also seem to be the primary users and likely inventors of chai tea, but their chai recipes are often also seemingly sweetened. One of the primary Khajiit tea inventions seems to be a specific bone mending tea, a first era recipe originating in Elsewhere that helps relieve the pain of bone injuries. It's made with a rare Tumja leaf, and it interestingly seems to have become far more popular in Morrowind than in Elsewhere, despite seemingly originating in Elsewhere. In Morrowind they even gave it a different name, despite it being the same tea, as they started associating the healing tea with their living god Almalexia, thus calling the tea Alma's Bone Mending Blend. Cool. Now, other than that, the Khajiit also have several really sweet teas with some alcohols in it. And they also have some berry teas and a few minty teas. Interestingly enough, it's even said that on the Elsewhere coast, the Khajiit have made a peculiar seaweed tea, but we know next to nothing about that one. And we know that the traveling Khajiit caravans also have their own tannic flavored tea. That said, another race that will make tea with seaweed are apparently the Marmer or the Sea Elves, who seemingly have a pretty prevalent recipe for seaweed tea, which they can make on the high seas. And that recipe seems to have also been adapted by some of the other Tamrielic pirates, who will make the seaweed tea with some mint. And they actually aren't the only ones, as the Sloat of Thras also seemingly make seaweed tea. Specifically, they make chai tea with seaweed. Cool. You wanna hear another funny recipe of tea? The Bosmer make beetle tea, hot water infused with beetle juice, because, you know, the Green Pact forbids the Bosmer to harm the plants of Valenwood, so no tea leaf harvesting for them. Instead, beetle tea. Absolutely delicious. Probably. Alright, let's return to some of the more normal flavors, and let's go to the Summersadals and the High Elves. The High Elves have had a tea culture for ages, quite literally, as it's said that the ancient Altmer, their ancestors, already were quite fond of tea, and even the Aelids of Cyrodiil, their cousins, had quite a big tea culture. They even had a king that once had the name Haromir of Copper and Tea, so that should tell you something about the elves and tea. Now, the High Elves of the Somerset Isles specifically seem to be fond of jasmine tea and may even have been its original inventors. And they are also quite fond of different herbal tonics, as they have quite a few different herbal tea flavors and a few herbal tonics. Alright, next up, the Bretons. The Bretons of High Rock seem to be some of the most avid consumers of mint tea, with several variations from sweet mint tea to bitter ginger mint tea. Other than that, the Bretons have a very interesting tea called sea salt tea, which is salt seawater mixed with tea leaves served in glassware while hot. Now, why salt water? Well, it's supposedly a palate cleanser between different meals, you know, to get the taste of the previous one out of your system. Oh, and they also have lemon lotus tea, which I really like. Cool. Now, of the Nords we know practically nothing, other than one specific recipe for wild red mountain flower tea, which is extremely bitter and is made with the mountain flowers that you can find growing all around Skyrim, specifically the red ones. It's said that foreign travelers who learn the recipe will often sweeten the tea a bit, but that true Nords on the road will drink it unsweetened to enjoy the tartness that the flower gives the tea. Now, this recipe is specifically for Nordic travelers, and it's said that it's mostly drunk on the road instead of in homes. That's all that we know. Now, on an old special on this channel, I made the tea myself from a recipe in the Old Elder Scrolls Cookbook, Volume 1, and this was my reaction to the unsweetened tea. Right, so look in the cup. This is the Red Mountain Flower Tea. And we heard that the real Nords drink it unsweetened. Fuck this. Bottoms up? This is my camera guy Sam, and we're gonna do bottoms up now, so wish us luck. 3, 2, 1. Oh god! Oh fuck! Oh! Grand. That brought back terrible memories. Alright. Although I do specifically remember that we made some mistake with the recipe, but hey, it was disgusting. Now, as for the final human race, the Red Guards, we know that they drink tea, but we don't know any of their recipes or specific tea flavors. But they have tea houses almost everywhere, so we know that they have tea, they just have not been fleshed out at all. Now, unlike the Red Guards, we don't know anything about the Argonians either, but that's because Argonians apparently aren't that into tea. Not saying that they won't drink it, but it's just not a very important part of their culture, so they also haven't been fleshed out at all. But the opposite is true of the final culture, the Dunmer of Morrowind or the Dark Elves. Dark Elves, like the Khajiit, absolutely love tea, from sweet to bitter to herbal, they drink it all. We know that both Vivek and Almalexia had teas named after them, and with Vivek having a chai tea named after him, and Almalexia had that renamed Khajiit painkiller tea. Now we also know that they often make teas of root, as both Canis and Trauma root tea are quite popular, with Canis root tea said to wake up the body and mind, while Trauma root tea works to calm your body and mind down. They also have a tea called Spide Skin Peel Skimmer tea, which alleviates the pain of skin diseases such as corpus disease and the pain and itch of bug bites. Interestingly, this tea has a Daedra heart in it. Sounds delectable. Now, tea is a specific favorite dish of Telvanni wizards, who also have a really interesting set of drinking supplies, as you can see on screen. Their specialty Telvanni tea is said to be made with bergamot, lemon and lotus, and is drunk specifically by the greatest wizards of their society. Okay, so one final honorable mention in the culture section for this video goes to the Akaviri Seisi, of whom we know that they also drink tea. Specifically, they drink lotus tea with ginseng, being in line with their more Asiatic inspiration. Alright, now next to all the cultural flavors that we've talked about here, there are several other Tamriel white teas that you should know about. We have a whole list of Tamriel white flavors that you can get basically all around the continent. Almost none of them have more to them than just their name. But there are some that are definitely interesting, so while this is not a full list, let me give you an insight in some of the more interesting ones. So, first of all, there are several likely aphrodisiac teas meant to get you in the mood for activities under the sheets. Some of them even have alcohol in them, talking specifically about the Bella's Kiss tea, the Honest Lassie's Honey tea, and the First Kiss tea. Now, there's also a special Heart's Day tea, so the Tamriel equivalent of our Valentine's Day, which is a tea made with rose petals and honey. We also know that there's a specific tea made for curing parched throats, named Soothing Bard's Throat tea, which means that it probably is a lot used by bards who are having a parched throat. Yeah, there's not much that we know about it other than that. Now, there's also slaughterfish tea, which, unlike the name suggests, is not made with slaughterfish parts. It's just a seaweed tea. Now, there's also some magical sounding teas that we know nothing about, but do deserve a mention, like ethereal tea and enlightenment tea. They are likely high elf or perhaps Dunmer teas, but I could not find a way to link them to any of the races, and to be fair, there's not much other information about them other than their names. And that was basically all the interesting teas. Like, we have many more flavors that we know of, like comberry tea and honey tea and rose herbal tea, sour flower tea, winter rose tea and so on, but we just know nothing about them. So for a full list, just look at the list of provisions in the Elder Scrolls Online, because you'll find that anything there is basically just a name, but we do know that it's there. So feel free to look at it, and you can look at some of the ingredients for it, but there's not much that's really interesting in there, unfortunately, other than what I already mentioned. Anyway, that's about all I can say about tea on Tamriel, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this video and that I managed to teach you something new about the Elder Scrolls lore today. And if I did, why not give the video a like and maybe return for the next Elder Scrolls lore video, probably next week. Anyway, all that's left for me to be done is to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Doji, Hunter Joe, KLegendM, King Chris 20, RB Dash, Volkure of Argonia, Devin Mattingly, Rakai and Sword of Bushido. These people, along with all the others on screen, keep my channel afloat, and for that I am very grateful. That said, I will see you all in the next Elder Scrolls lore video, probably next week, although for this one, probably a little earlier.